to the chief musician, to Jeduthun, a psalm of David. So Jeduthun, that's 1 Chronicles 16, verse 38, and then verses 41 through 42. He was the father of Obed-Edom, 1 Chronicles 13, verse 14. He oversaw worship and some of the other tabernacle responsibilities. I got that from JFB, and it reads this way: "Truly my soul waits upon God alone. From him comes my salvation." So we want the Lord's timing in our lives. Jesus was never late. You ever think about that? I mean, he was just always on time. And that's how we want to live too. Walking in the Spirit. And the Lord just brings us to the right place at the right time. And he alone is my rock, verse 2, and my salvation. I love to read the word salvation. It just is so meaningful. And so anyway, and David, he likes to write. He likes to think about salvation, and we can tell by his writings. He is my defense. I shall not be shaken. So in Psalm 61, he prayed, "Lead me to the rock that is higher than I." Well, here it is, the rock that is higher than he, where there is salvation and life, and security and everything else. And we recall Proverbs chapter 18, verse 10, "The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run to it, and they are safe." And so the rock speaks of a solid footing. You can stand upon the word of God. You can stand upon the rock that followed them in the wilderness. 1 Corinthians 10:4, who is Jesus. He's the rock. He's the word of God. And we can trust in him. So verse 3, "How long will you attack a man? All of you would slay him as a leaning wall and as a tottering fence." So the enemy has no mercy. Don't look for mercy from the enemy, or from the enemies of God for that matter, because they are attacking you. They're attacking God. They're attacking you because of God, and they're not here to show mercy. They're here, to fight against what is good and right. It's hard to think of, as the people of God, we're inclined to be kind and merciful and so on, and they're not, not the enemy of our souls and the demonic forces that are behind the evil in the world. And so we have to keep that in mind. Now, regarding dishonest people, if you point out what they're doing, if you point out to them the evil of their deeds, it's not going to work. I mean, they don't want to hear that what they're doing is wrong. It's just not going to work. So how do you reach them? With the gospel, with the living word of God. Hebrews 4:12. It doesn't return void. Isaiah 55:11. You just speak the word, and it has the power to save. And so that's our mission and our message. Verse 4, "They consult only to cast him down from his high position. They delight in lies. They bless with their mouths, but inwardly they curse." Selah. Selah is stop and think about that. But sometimes people can't be trusted. And remember that God hates lying. Proverbs 6:17. And so a good question at this point is, do the ends justify the means? For some people, they think it does, but it doesn't. Sin always leads to bad results. Verse 5, "O my soul, wait quietly for God alone, for my hope is in him." So this is poetic language, and David speaks of his soul, figuratively for the most part. And, we bring our prayers and petitions to the Lord, but there is also a time to simply wait and allow the Lord to work, allow time for us to understand what's happening. Talk to the Lord before you complain to others. There's a good course of action for us. Verse 6, "He alone is my rock and my salvation. He is my defense. I shall not be shaken." So this is the same as verse 2. Both are coupled with a preceding verse. And he says, once more, "I'll shake." Hebrews chapter 12, once more, "I'll shake the earth." And it's coming. He's going to shake things up. But for the people of God, we're not going to be shaken because we're standing on the solid rock, the rock that doesn't roll. I heard that somewhere. We're standing on the rock that doesn't roll. hand cannot be shaken, not on the shifting sands. So verse 7, in God is my salvation and my glory, the rock of my strength, and my refuge is in God. So 4 things here: salvation, glory, rock, and refuge. And all 4 of these are from a person in need. And do you need the Lord today? Call upon his name. Remember these things, that he is in your life if you know him. He's the rock. And our honor doesn't come from mankind, from other people, but from the Lord. And we're not ashamed. Romans 1:16, we're not ashamed of the gospel. It's the power of God unto salvation to all them that believe. Romans 1:16. So verse 8, trust in him at all times. O people, pour out your hearts before him. God is a refuge for us. Selah, Selah, stop and think about that. He's a refuge. He's our shelter. We can come to him and find safety and security and what we need. Why wouldn't we? Sometimes we're just out of touch, we're out of step, and we don't remember how good it is in the presence of the Lord. But here, where the Lord is where we must be found if we really want to succeed in life or in the good plans that we have. So trust in him. Trust him in trouble. Trust him at all times, whether good or bad. Now, what does it mean to pour out your heart? Excuse me. Oh, people, pour out your hearts before him. What does that mean? To pour out your heart? Well, he already knows everything. And you're not informing him, but you're just telling him. You're expressing it in your own words. And when we do that, it causes us to think about what we're saying, to think about the thoughts and emotions that we have. And when we verbalize these things, and when we verbalize them to the Lord by the work of his Spirit within us, sometimes we will gain insight we didn't know we had. We'll gain new insight that we didn't previously have. And the Lord will give us, as we do this in his presence, he'll give us all the things that accompany the fruit of the Spirit. Peace that we don't even understand. But then we will also understand things on a different level, in a different way. It's so beneficial. It's not just therapeutic. It's so spiritual and necessary for the people of God to talk to the Lord, to verbalize our thoughts, to be in conversation with him. So, trust also is something you learn. The brain is a muscle. You work your muscle, it gets stronger. The capacity increases. The same thing with your brain. You work your brain, it gets stronger. You develop a greater capacity for using your brain. Same thing with faith. In a very similar way, faith, the more you use it, the stronger it gets. The more you trust the Lord, the more able you are to trust in him. So where we want to be. Verse 9, those of low degree are but only a mist, and those of high degree are a lie. To be laid in the balance, they are altogether lighter than mist. So, wow, that really says a lot, doesn't it? Wealth and social standing are often due to projected image more than something with a solid base. It's a facade. It's a teetering facade. It is so fragile. People, they just don't have any idea. They don't realize how fragile their facade can be. All you have to do is break down their natural course, their natural pattern of life. That happens on trips, like when you're traveling or something. People become the real person comes out, and some people are very unlovely. And you see that, in airports, on airplanes, and so on. Just imagine what happens during a crisis time or during warfare and stuff. What's really in there is going to come out. Okay, verse 10, Do not trust in opposition, and do not hope in robbery. If riches increase, set not your heart upon them. You know, humanity is famous for oppression, and that's where a lot of people have put their hope, and it'll fail, because the Lord is going to repay people. That's in the following verses, verse 12 mainly. And poor people are going to end up being better off than the rich, because the Lord is so often on the side of the poor. Especially a poor person who puts their trust in the Lord is just infinitely better off than a wealthy person who doesn't know God. And so 11, God has spoken once, twice have I heard this, that power belongs to God. So God speaks. We need to keep that in mind. You know, it's too often just taken for granted, especially, you know, among the people of God, or the people who have been around church. You know, God speaks. Of course he speaks, right? But think that over. God speaks. I mean, let that change your life. God speaks. He has spoken, and we can hear from him. We can hear what he has to say. We can hear the words of the Almighty. Yeah, he has spoken. And David says, I've heard this. Power belongs to God. That's the message in this verse. You want to know who's in charge. It's not the person with the shiny facade. It's the Lord who determines up or down what's going to happen. So, verse 12, also unto you, O Lord, belongs mercy, for you render to every person according to his work. So, men can't even tip the scales. They're like mist in a scale. But God is holding the scales. He's the one in charge. Okay. The important thing in life is whether you're pleasing to God, whether you're living for him, whether you know him, you're walking with him, and you are yielding to his word. Galatians 1:10, am I now trying to win the approval of men or of God? Or am I trying to please men? If I were still trying to please men, I would not be a servant of Christ. The important thing is to follow God, not to follow fashion, to follow the latest trend or popular opinion, but to follow God. And the person who is secure on the rock of salvation is going to be walking with him, is going to be doing what he says, following the Lord. Trust him in trouble. Trust him at all times, and forgive, and trust him forever.